Time to finally work with resin. I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but the idea is to take this sheer corset and add resin pieces to it to make it look like it's wet. It's to go with the skirt I'm making for Aluxia's Enchanted, which the dress I'm making is inspired by Upon a Starlit Tide, and then there's a scene in it where her dress is essentially like coming from the water itself. So it's very ethereal, very water-based, very mermaid. The thing is, I've never done this before, so we're gonna see how it goes.
Okay, so some of the supplies you'll need is your fabric, your corset, saran wrap, more fabric, different decorations you want to add on, a stirring stick, scissors, you don't mind getting messed up, a mixing bowl, and your resin. I also use this as drop cloth, it's just a plastic trash bag. Having one of these hard mannequins is also helpful. This is a cheap one that my father-in-law got from Goodwill. You want to make sure the mannequin is your size when the corset is shut. So that's what I did here. I double checked to make sure those pins are where the skirt is going to hit me at the waist, so I know where to stop the embellishments. This is super important. Make sure to wrap your mannequin in saran wrap before you put the corset on when you're ready to work with it. Also, I have a lot of glitter. I know this. We don't need to talk about it. Now it is time to mix our resin together. I did get this large mixing bowl with the idea of putting the fabric in it, but in reality, the resin mixture was kind of small considering the size of the bottles. So just keep that in mind. If you're using smaller portions of fabric at a time, I would maybe get a smaller mixing bowl, but I went bigger, went home, apparently. So it's a 1-for-1 ratio, but obviously look at your manufacturer's instructions on how to mix it. I originally was going to use this tiny little mixing cup, and then I realized that was just taking way too long for my liking, and I just knew I was going to need a lot, so I was like, I'm just going to empty out half of each bottle into the mixing bowl and go from there. And then in my instructions, it said to stir it in the same way. That's probably to prevent bubbles. I didn't really mind about the bubbles because I was thinking water and like air bubbles and water and stuff, so I didn't really care that much. But obviously do what works for you. I also mixed in some glitter, um, just to kind of bring up the iridescent and make it reflective. Okay, now time for the actual scary part. So I cut a piece of fabric that I felt would be big enough to pleat and kind of fold on the cup, and I just dunked it in the resin. However, I did not realize that when this fabric was wet, even with the resin, it would turn almost black. I thought it would just give it like a wet sheen. No, no, no. It made it darker. So just keep that in mind and do some test strips. I just, as you can see, did not do that. So here you can see I'm kind of finessing it. The texture is similar to like, it's not paper mache because this fabric's kind of thick and stiff. It's a liquid satin. So when you see a lot of these like resin corsets being done, that's just on thinner material and it's easier to manipulate. This is harder. So it required a little bit more finesse. When I pleated it, I had to hold it. I also did zero research about resin, um, per usual, and just dove in as I do. And hey, but I'm wearing gloves, so that's a start. And I didn't quite understand the process of it. I think I thought it would hold in place faster and I wouldn't have to hold the pleats where they were as long as I did and kind of finesse it as much. I don't know why. I don't know. I think I just thought it would kind of hold its shape a little better. But that could also just be the nature of the fabric because when I did the smaller pieces with organza later that you'll see, I didn't have as much trouble. But again, I also didn't pleat it like how I was doing this fabric. Another thing I will say, because I wasn't covering this corset completely, next time I would probably wrap the rest of the corset on the outside in saran wrap because I ended up getting a lot of dripping from the resin, which made the front of it a little stiff, which wasn't the end of the world, but I wasn't able to sew stuff into it later, as I'll talk about. But just keep that in mind, and that's what I learned from this and would use next time. Okay, so I was able to add the blue to both cups and kind of folded it how I wanted, and just occasionally press down the pleats as I saw they were maybe lifting up. Then I started working on the organza because, again, I wanted to pull in the fabrics from the skirt to make it all tie together and also to give it that watery, ethereal feel. This fabric kind of almost had the opposite problem because it's more open of a weave. The resin kind of just seeped right through it. So I was still able to get it work. It was just, again, I had to use a little bit of finesse. Also had to be careful with the dripping that happened, but it wasn't too crazy. Nothing major at all. Just made things difficult when it came to adding stuff later, like I said, we'll get into. But I kind of just shaped it and molded it how I wanted, knowing that I could probably trim it down once it was hard because I did just do one layer. You can do multiple layers. I've seen people who do resin corsets without the base that I did. They add multiple layers and then they'll also layer in glitter, beads, sequins, rhinestones, flowers, even like pressed flowers. So you can really just do what you want with it. I just stuck to the one layer because I was just seeing what would happen and then I ended up liking the results for what I was going for. Okay, I trimmed down some of the extra bits and the stuff on the inside so it wouldn't be hard against my skin. And it's pretty hard. And I kind of kept this like sculptural piece going up. So that way it's almost like a wave. This is it. I'm still going to add more stuff to it, don't worry. And like I said, the skirt's going to cut it off here. So you won't really see anything else. But I'm going to drape some pearls and then add some like more fabric here and maybe some more along the cup and the waist, but I'll probably just sew them on so that way I don't make it too stiff to the point where it doesn't have any give when I'm cinching it. So, but yeah, happy with it so far. Okay, so I showed you a clip of me trying it on and I'm happy with it so far. So this is where we are. I also forgot I still have this fabric left over and like I have a decent amount. So I'm probably going to take some of it and kind of pull it into here and maybe do some here. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to kind of see and play around with it and see what the fabric tells me to do. But I think that'll be a good way to bring more of the blue and make it more cohesive because this did dry really dark. Like you can tell it's navy, but it's like a dark navy. So we're going to kind of go from there. But yeah, I'm happy with it so far. I'm pretty much just going to focus here up since the skirt is going to do this and there's no point in embellishing this if you're not going to see it anyways. So that's where we're at and I'm just going to keep on keeping on. Okay, here she is. I ended up having to glue a lot of stuff because I didn't realize like with the resin touching the mesh, I wouldn't be able to sew through it. So here it is kind of all attached and then I was trying to find a way to add the purple to make it more cohesive. So I just did some swags along the back to kind of mimic what is happening in the skirt. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'll add some detail shots later. And my biggest thing I learned with this was depending on the type of fabric, it might make it darker, which I guess I should have known. But I think it was just one of those things that like, oh, when it dries, it won't look like it won't be dark from being wet. But the nature of it is it dries to look wet. So I guess I just didn't really think about it that much. Um, the other thing is that like learning the actual resin process itself, I kind of went in without doing any research, which is on me, but it was a lot stickier before like it got hard. So it the curing process was really interesting and like having to actually hold like I thought it would just be soaked and kind of be like paper mache, but it was a little bit more finessing I needed to do with this specific fabric anyways. The organza was pretty okay, but the satin was a little bit trickier. Mixing in the glitter was super fun and I'm really happy I did that, and then just adding all these little shells and things and details later. So I'm really happy with it. This would be a fun thing to do for like other projects as well. And yeah, and I have some leftover resin that I'm going to be using for an accessory for this. So stay tuned for that. And I can't wait to show you the final look.